We have a distinguished panelist here, Bernhard Gunter, economics. Thank you. And then we have Erran Carmel from Kogod. Thank you. And then we have Anna Olsson from CFE. So thank you for being here. And then Robin Lumsdaine from Kogod as well. So thank you for being here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give each of the speakers like 2-minute opening remark, followed by my question for the speaker. And after all speakers gave opening remark, I'll ask a few questions to everyone, all the speakers. And after that, we'll open the floor for questions from you. Okay?
Thank you, Guanho, and thank you everybody for being here. I think the fact that so many people are here really emphasizes how important AI is to us and how interested people are, and that's just wonderful for us in Kogod as we're leading the way with promoting AI. I think one of the things, so my remarks tack on very nicely to what Amy just talked about. One of the things that makes me really proud of the work we're doing in AI, both at Kogod and at AU, is that we're emphasizing responsible use of AI. And that's something that I've really tried to emphasize in what I'm doing. My remarks are going to be basically about how I've tried to engage students in the classroom in thinking about AI. So I just want to put up a few sort of assumptions that I make about our students. So generally speaking, and not just our students, but any students, generally speaking, and we can all think of exceptions, but generally speaking, students are honest, responsible, interested in learning, stressed and under pressure, younger than we are, and looking for guidance. And so that's where we come in and we can help them to learn to use AI responsibly. So what I do in my class on the very first day of class is I just run a brainstorming session. And I start off with saying how many of us are using AI. I raise my hand, of course, and every hand goes up. And then I say, let's list all the uses and the tools the tools that we use, and then the uses for AI. And this is just a screenshot of the brainstorming session that I had for my class this semester, International Finance. And so we've got the uses, and I come with my own list as well in the back of my mind. So I fill this out if students don't come up with some of these. But we have the uses and then the tools, and then what we do is we say, okay, I'm very agnostic and flexible as to how we're going to use AI. I want us as a class to come up with an agreement on how we're going to use AI. We're going to go through the syllabus as part of my introduction to class. I want us to come up together with an agreement on how we're going to use AI for all of these deliverables. And part of why I say that is because I want AI to be something that we can talk openly about. I want it to be something that levels the playing field, not causes greater inequity between people who know a lot of tools and people who don't. So I want to make sure that the students share their knowledge, not just with me, but also with each other. So I encourage everybody to take a picture of this. I do too. And then after that, I put together some slides that summarize our discussion, and I put it on Canvas. So this is a list of all the uses that my students came up with. This is a list of all the tools that they use. And then this is our agreement regarding the delivery. So I have our students make an initial forecast. They have weekly homework. They have a currency project that runs throughout the semester. They do video presentations periodically. And this is basically what they decided. And it varies by class. I've done this now for a number of years, and so different classes come up with different things. But for instance, one of the things in homework that we decided is that you can't, because of the intellectual property questions that came up earlier, there's no typing the question in exactly into an AI tool, but we can ask, and we can't ask AI for the answer, but we can use AI to define or clarify terms, and we can use it to check our work after we've done the homework. So this is basically just the agreement that I post online, and that's and you know, that way students basically take agency and ownership in what we do in class. So it helps. I think, you know, one of the things that when we started talking about AI that I thought was really important is we need to stop treating students like criminals. And we really need to work on engaging them. So, you know, so much of the discussion is about how do we catch cheating? How do we enforce rules? And I don't think that's a very constructive way to approach AI. I think it's much more important to talk about, okay, there's this great technology and these great tools and there's advances happening every day. And so how do we make sure that we stay up to speed on that? And the best way to do that is to learn not just from me, but from each other. I think that's and then there's the responsibility part. Sorry, very important. And so basically, again, we for every way in which the students are going to use AI, they come up with responsibilities. What's the human in the loop thing that we have to do? So, for instance, references is the easy one. For every reference that you get, you have to actually go and look it up and make sure that that physical reference exists. But there's also so structuring text, we can provide the prompts, but we're going to modify the text on our own. I have a couple of things about adding detail. So again, what happens is when the students agree with this, I go through and augment, and then this gets posted to Canvas. And so it's a tool. I can also put it into my Perplexity chatbot. So it's a tool that students can reference and use when they're unsure about how to use it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. So question for you, Robin. So I heard that you encourage students to use to begin with their own ideas and then allow AI to assist with their work while restricting its use for generating full answers. So what specific syllabus, policies or grading practices or classroom routines have been effective in reinforcing these expectations in students' behavior?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, so again, when we think about enforcing, I'm going to go back to this first slide. Generally speaking, I think students are honest. So I don't really focus so much on enforcement. I think the question of how do I know that this is resonating with students? To me, the proof is in how they respond. So every time a student asks me about, I used this tool, how should I refer to it? How should I reference it? Every time a student shares in class something they did with AI that then helps other students to learn. That's basically how I feel that it's working. And I don't really focus too much on enforcement. At times I will ask, did you use AI? Did you forget to disclose it? And so sometimes we get that. But in general, it's much more about, in some ways, the enforcement, I think you can observe enforcement from the outcomes. Because if they're not using it appropriately, they're not going to do well in my class.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Bernhard. So I bring up your presentation.
Thank you for having me here on the panel. I should clarify that I am not an expert at all on this topic, but I did this survey. We interviewed, together with my research assistant, Mariam Salihu, we interviewed 502, actually we interviewed 516, but then we got some results which we couldn't use. We interviewed 502 AU students all over the place, at AU different places in January and February. And maybe I should give a little bit more background on why I wanted to know what AU students think about AI. I have two children. Well, they're no more really children. They're 20 years old and 26-year-old. My daughter loves math. Yeah, she did her PhD in computational biology at a joint program of MIT and Harvard University. She's 26 years old. She always loved math. But when I asked her on what she thinks about AI, both of my grown-up children, to say it mildly, they don't like AI at all. And so far I thought, okay, well, if they don't like it, maybe they are outliers. Let's see what AU students think about AI. And that's how this survey came around. As I said, 502 students is nearly 10% of the undergraduate population of AU. We answered 4 questions, basically 2 questions and 2 supplementary question. We asked him 2 basic questions. What do you think the impact of AI will be on society? Overall negative, neutral, overall positive. And we asked the second question, what do you think the overall impact of AI will be specifically on yourself? And then we collected data on their age, and we collected data on their income level. And this is the result. Okay, overall, the far majority, more than 50%, 51% if you take it overall of the 502 students, think that the overall impact of AI on society is mostly negative. Yeah, so you may say, okay, I bring this a little bit more detailed by every year because it could be like, oh, just arbitrary that we get that result. No, but we looked at by age group, and it's pretty consistent. It looks like that the older they get, the more negative they are, but there is no, it's not statistically significant. But nevertheless, this was an interesting result. So just to summarize here, overall, 51% of 502 AU students surveyed, they said that the overall impact on AI on society is mostly negative. This is just a marginal more detail here. We also looked at income group and not fair income, but the family income, their parents, where they grew up in. And if you look at the less than 60,000 K annual income, then we don't have a result that strong, but there are only 12% of 502 students who are in that income group. The bigger income groups are the 60 to 120,000 and above 120,000. It's actually more than 50% of the AU students, at least the 502 we surveyed, have a family income of more than 120,000. And we clearly see the same result again, that overall the students don't think that the impact of AI on society is positive, not even neutral. They think it's overall negative. To the second question, I mentioned this. The second question, just very briefly, the perception of the 18 to 20-year-old students on the overall impact on themselves. And here we see the majority saying that they think it's mostly neutral. And to some degree, that fits what we think to know about the impact of AI, that it will replace more manual labor or more tasks that can be done by AI, but doctors, people who have graduated from university, those jobs maybe we really don't know at this point what the outcome of AI will be, but it's more of a perception that those jobs are likely a little bit safer than some other jobs, and that's why we get this result. So overall, 48% of the 502 students surveyed stated that they think the overall impact on AI on themselves is mostly neutral, and hence student perception of the impact society is much worse than what they think the impact will be on themselves. Okay, I think my microphone stopped again. So what? Coming back again. So what? Does it have anything to do on how we can or should use AI in our teaching, in our classrooms, in our assignments? You may say, well, it's just a survey, nothing to do. No, I think you agree. It has absolutely something to do on how we use AIU. And the reason I think it has to do something on how we teach AU is that we need to realize that the mostly negative views on how AI will impact society has implications on some students resisting to want to use AI. They say, I don't want to use this AI. Yeah, and there are various reasons for why, but it has implications if they think that it has negative implications on themselves, it has negative implications on society. They may not want to use AI like my children. They don't want to use it. They don't think it's useful at all. For example, this is just one of the concerns, environmental impact. Yeah, they are worried about the negative impact of AI on the environment, especially on climate change, and there are some details. This is not based on the survey. Generation C seems to be the generation that is the most worried and stressed about climate change. And this is where I stop my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing interesting survey findings. So my question for you, Bernhard, is you find that many AU students perceive AI societal impact as negative and also express concern about environmental impact. So what specific course policies or communication strategy would you implement to address these concerns while promoting AI literacy?
Okay. So, first of all, I think it is important to take these concerns into account and to take them seriously, not just to say, oh yeah, well, they don't like AI. No, we have to think about that seriously. It has implications on how they use it and so on and so forth. So we need to take their concerns seriously. And that implies that we need to integrate a discussion, for example, on the impact of AI on climate change, on the environment, we need to have a discussion, integrated discussion on the environmental impact of AI into our curriculum. Yeah, we cannot just say use it, that's it. I think it would be useful to have some discussion on the environmental impact and have it in the curriculum. It doesn't need to be in the curriculum of each class, but we should think about having something along that discussion. Second, I have a feeling that a lot of students, we know that they waste a lot of time on social media, and I have the impression that the students who use AI, they also waste a lot of time on using AI. They don't use it efficiently. Yeah, so we need to teach them. You need to teach me on how to use AI more efficiently. How don't we just, ask AI, oh, do this, oh, give me a different answer, give me a slight different answer, and another one, go to a different tool and get another answer. There's so much waste. So we need to teach our students and ourselves on how we can use AI more efficiently, more environmentally sustainable way to use it. And then third, we need to think about using that AI should be generated using more resources which are renewable. We know that the data centers use a lot of data, and that is a concern, that we use so much data, so much electricity, and that has implications on climate change. So maybe we need to push more towards generating these AI tools that use alternative renewable energy. So that's in a nutshell what I came up with. As I said, I'm not an expert on this at all.
Thank you so much. Next up is Erran Carmel.
Hey, everyone. I'm going to give you the perspective of myself. When AI was introduced just about 3 years ago, Dean Dave Marchick, who's sitting here now at the front, he tasked me with heading the first AI committee in this new generation at Kogod, and I've been involved in that part of the strategy of the Kogod School of Business ever since, including now we're calling it the Reimagining Kogod in the Age of AI. The other part that I want you to know about me is that I'm a futurist. I teach classes about the future and foresight here at American University. I've been doing that on and off for 15 years, so I think about the future. And the two key words that I've said to the committee just last week, and I'll say to you when you listen to my presentation, is be imaginative and be bold, okay? So with that, here's just some observations, kind of a potpourri of things. All right, so one is when Kelly and I were doing a lot of interviews with peer institutions, we got some interesting responses from other business schools around the country, and I began to think of these things as cliches, at least for business schools. One is we have to be agile, okay? Two is we have to infuse AI in the curriculum. Okay, we're doing that. Okay, next. Next, AI fluency. We have to introduce AI fluency at the entry level for both grad and undergrads. That has to be done, okay? Critical thinking. This is where we, in the institutions, this is where we add value. Us as teachers, professors, we have to remember that, and we've heard that already today. And finally, assessments, tests, exams, and so forth. We must rethink them. They're broken. We have to face it, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Okay, so I think as a futurist, and when you think about what's going to happen to universities in the 2030s, here are some of the elements that some of us are saying are likely. I'm not making a prediction here. I'm not saying they're absolute, but we're saying it's likely. And so we need shorter and more modular degrees. And of course, as I say this, I think about American University, the institution I've been in for many years. We need shorter and more modular courses, and we need structures to support that. Two, we have to have shorter and more modular courses. And finally, again, be bold and be imaginative. We have to begin to close our classrooms and turn them into studios. in our interviews and in other things that I've been involved in, we hear again and again about the complaints of students is that every teacher tells us a different thing about AI when we come into the classroom. One set of rules, another set of rules. Every professor has different rules. Students often complain, and I think justifiably. Syracuse University has a very nice solution, which I really like, and that's why I'm sharing that with you. I think it's an easy solution. In my humble opinion, I think we should do it here at AU. Syracuse, which as a reminder, if of the 500 colleges and universities in the United States, Syracuse is the one of the few that is most similar to ours in most characteristics. It's a private school and so on. A committee set 3 levels of AI usage, and the professor has to choose in the syllabus whether it's level 1, 2, or 3. Okay? And that's it, and the students will get it. And that's what, it's an easy solution, it solves the confusion. Finally, last slide here. Last week, 15 of us at Kogod, including some of the people here in this room, and myself and Professor Bill Bellows, who's sitting way in the back, we chaired an intensive session to brainstorm about where Kogod is going in the coming years. And as a futurist, we set a number of different scenarios for Kogod. Now, that doesn't mean that we'll go in this or any of the directions, but these were the futures for the 2030s for Kogod to incite imagination in the teams that were working on this. I'll just mention a few of them here. Kogod AI on steroids. So one of the key things that the team that worked on that came up with is that when you enter Kogod in the year 2030, you are handed an AI agent, and that AI agent will kind of surround you like Jarvis. Somebody mentioned Jarvis from the Avengers, and will be part of your entire education all the way 4 years. Will know how you learn, will know when to speed you up, slow you down, and we'll be able to give you lots of personalized information. The team didn't come up with a good name. They thought about Big Brother, which of course it is. So in order to moderate that a little bit, they called it Big Sister. We have to come up with a better name. Learning Without Walls was about working, tearing down the classrooms to some extent, but working with industry and with alumni on projects rather than in the structured discipline verticals that we do. And we did, I'll stop here. And thank you.
Thank you, Erran. Appreciate it. Erran, would you mind coming over here? I feel lonely here. Would you mind coming over here? So Robin Lumsdaine has to had to leave because of her office hour right now. So so I understand you are a futurist. So how can AU be a leader in this space, integrating AI into education while minimizing the risk that come with being a first mover?
Yeah, I think two things come to mind from your question. One is to do a lot of experiments and fast. We use in entrepreneurship, we use the term minimal viable product. And we're working with Dean Marchick and with the committee and with Guan-Hu to develop some of these now at Kogod. We've already done a lot of this. We're going to continue doing that. And the other is to do measurement. So I talked about the assessment structure that we've been doing in universities for a few hundred years. It's broken. We have to face it. It's broken. We must fix it. And so we also need to measure it. And I would suggest that that's one of the things we can begin to measure quickly. For example, oral exams, which I've never done in my discipline. That might be one of the avenues that we need to go on. And so we need to measure how the students respond to it, how the professors respond to it, how objective it is, and so on. So move fast and experiment and measures.
Thank you.
I do not have slides. I'm the outlier. So hi everyone, and thank you so much, Guanhu, for hosting this great conference, much needed conference, and also for including me in this panel. So I come at this wearing two hats. It says up there CFE, but I'm also a faculty member in the School of Public Affairs, and in my capacity as the teacher of an introductory comparative politics class, I found myself a few semesters ago. I'm just going to hold on to both. I think 2023, scrambling to rethink, revise my syllabus and my assignments on the eve of the beginning of the semester, which I think happened to a lot of us, and really realizing that several of my assignments, primarily my paper, my take-home final exam, my honor-based take-home quizzes, were just not adequate anymore, given that students now had these tools at their fingertips on their computers. And yeah, it really surprised me in a way, because it challenged me to rethink these assignments in ways that I possibly should have done like years before, much like I think Erran was talking about how we have to rethink our assessments. But I saw some really interesting positive benefits of it. And that includes, actually maybe I should save that one, save the answer to that question. And mainly, yeah, it really surprised me how what I ended up doing, it created a way to help students reach their learning outcomes for the course in much more significant ways that I have sort of not noticed before, and I'll tell you more later, I think, if I get a chance. I want to just briefly mention the other hat I'm wearing. So when I became director of CTRL in 2023, now CFE, it very quickly became clear that we're headed towards very, very big change. I was part of the transition from in-person to online teaching in the spring of 2020, which we then considered a huge change. And this time, though, it's so much more multifaceted. We have to rethink entirely how we teach, how we assess learning, what we teach our students, how we are going to teach them how to use these tools responsibly, while at the same time retaining those human skills that also will be important for them. And so I think the two main lessons throughout the last, is it now 2.5 years, have been, on one hand, that this is the humility of being Swedish. The more I learn about AI, the more I realize how little I know. And it's also an inspiration, because it is going to be a lifelong learning process, I think, for all of us. And then the other piece is in terms of what I think CFE, the Center for Faculty Excellence, can do to support faculty through this journey. I believe we really have to meet faculty where they are, to help them engage with AI on their terms, because we have so much diversity in how we teach and what we teach. And I hope that we're going to be able to continue to do that by providing the spaces where that can be done sufficiently. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Anna, for you, my question is, you redesigned assessments after AI undermined honor-based quizzes and take-home exams and so forth. Can you give us one concrete example of your redesigned assessment and tell us how it works and then how it doesn't work and so on?
Sure, and I'm going to choose the example of the assessment you didn't mention there, so my paper. So what I ended up doing, so I had the traditional kind of research paper due at the end of the semester, and like note checking endpoints up until the time when they were due. And I decided to start scaffolding that assignment, so building in multiple touch points throughout the semester, the two first of which I would also give really detailed feedback on for every single student. And then I also added a peer review component, which actually has become really wonderful, like surprisingly wonderful, and not because I bring cinnamon rolls to that class, but because the students really enjoy it. Like I can just sit back and hear them have these robust, excited conversations. And so So they do a peer review of their draft papers, give each other feedback before they finalize and submit the papers. And the main results of this have been just a significant improvement in the quality of their work, but also they engage. Oh, it's about to go out. No, they engage in the writing process throughout the semester. One of the main things that actually led to me doing this with this assignment was just learning that the main reason students turn to AI to help them write their papers is that they start the process too late. So they realize 3 days before the paper is due, they have to submit a paper. What is the solution? Now it's here. And so having them start earlier, thinking about their topic, their paper for much, much longer, it creates ownership. And then the peer review component creates accountability, both to themselves and to each other, because they're not alone anymore in the process of writing. And then finally, I just see much more coherent examples of like analysis that is really anchored in the theories and evidence that fits with the course topic. It's a comparative politics. It's a huge topic, and they each choose a country to write about. It's really a huge topic. It could go in so many different directions, but they're much more aligned with the course content now because they write them themselves, I think. There's no proof. And then just one final point I want to make is the reason I turned to these kind of emergency measures before doing anything else was that it was really equity, because I immediately felt that the playing field was so tilted instantly with the introduction of these tools. And I just felt that it was my responsibility as a professor to level that playing field, and with as I should say, with the quizzes and the final exam, moved to in-class assignments using the lockdown browser. This is not going to be my method forever, but I felt that it was important for me to start by leveling the playing field before I could start thinking about how to implement AI tools in the classroom. And that's what I've been doing since then, trying. Anyway, thank you.
All right, it's on and off. So I prepared the 5 questions, but I think I'll just ask one question so that we can open the floor for you to ask questions. So sorry you prepared to answer my 5 questions that I shared, but I'm going to ask only one question. What is the single most important or impactful faculty support or governance change AU could implement this academic year to responsibly scale AI in teaching? So this question is for everyone here. Anybody who wants to jump in?
I'll keep it really quick, but I think one of the best things we could do, or a good start, would be to conduct an inventory of all the efforts happening around campus related to AI, and to connect all the people, committees, working groups who are doing work on this, so we can pool our resources, learn from each other, coordinate our efforts.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would have had the same answer to some degree. That it's important to know what the attitude of students is. It's also important to know what the attitude of faculty is. We had recently in the faculty senate, there was a question if AI should be used to allow for summary or for minutes preparation. And there were actually some faculty who said no, they don't want that, but the majority said yes. So we adopted it, but you know, that is something important to know as well.
Some universities are experimenting with a new kind of high-level executive called a chief AI officer, and that is a very interesting experiment. It's very new. Should AU do it, perhaps?
That's your answer? Okay. Nice and brief. Thank you. Now we open the floor for questions from you. Okay.
Erran, I really liked your approach to saying we need to rethink the classroom. I was born in 1968 during the unrest of the youth, And then I grew up in Europe during 1980. So for once, I feel like age is an advantage here. Both of those markers were a lot about revolutionizing universities and what they do. They were protests against holding mass classrooms and introduced the seminar. Historically, that's at least what happened in European universities. And so I wonder how you envision those labs. You know, if this is a new type of revolution where we say we have to move away from the type of way we teach and use the classroom in a different way, what is it that you envision, you as a futurist?
I can answer just a little bit, but I really welcome the comments here. If we turn the classroom into a studio and we interface with all kinds of stakeholders, as a business professor, it's companies, there are other disciplines here. We work on problems, we work on projects, and there's less lecturing. Certainly, we still need a lot of dialogue. Students love the dialogue, and we shouldn't lose that. But the classrooms are designed in the 1800s, right? The professor at the front. So that just redesigning the classroom, I think, would change our mode of thinking.
Thank you. By the way, if you have any questions specific to Robin Lumsdaine, who had to leave early, please send her an email with your questions.
Yes, hello. I have a question about the use of copyrighted material, which is accessed through the Bender library and uploaded to a large language model and basically, you know, used to synthesize, analyze, summarize, and obviously there's a violation of copyright. But what is the policy that you tell your students in this? Because I've received different advice from different people.
Okay, so we have a librarian who could address the question. Thank you.
I'm probably not the person who should speak for the whole department, but don't use our materials in any large language model because it, not just for copyright reasons, but because it violates our contracts with the vendors. And so if you are using anything that you get from Bender Library and you're putting it in a large language model, you're putting us at risk. Did I miss anything? You should tell them.
Next question.
All right. I was going to say, if the microphone doesn't work, that'll be really awkward. My name's Amanda Getz. I work over with the Kogod School of Business Advising Office. I was just interested in kind of like some of the questions we get from students about, you know, why would I do a major or a minor with AI? You know, what's the point? So I'm just here to listen. But there were a couple of things that were said that I think focus a little bit more, well, the whole day is focusing more on teaching, but there are some things that are impacting the staff support side and the student support side, and I'm kind of curious about what kind of vision you see, not just for classrooms, but for students and the support resources they receive, like advising, academic coaching, tutoring, things like that, and what the future might look like for those services and individuals.
I think we kind of all know that as we progress with AI, all the formal and a lot of the tacit knowledge will begin to go into the AI, and students will probably go to the AI first before they come to you as a staff member for questions. And that's probably the direction that we're going in the medium to long term.
I put the Kogod in Marchick on the spot, and
great question. Nice to see everybody. We are infusing AI in everything. So student advising, I know my son is a senior. I know your kids are better than my son, but sometimes he registers for class at 3 in the morning the night before, doesn't know what to register for, and there's no advisors available. So we put all that on AI. For career, we have tools for resume development, practicing interviewing, anticipating what questions they're going to get, anticipating and getting advice on what questions they should ask in an interview, how to prepare. We put, Parthibon David is here, we put our faculty manual and all our faculty policies in a chatbot so that I know that you all think that the faculty manual is beautifully written, but it's indecipherable. And so with an LLM targeting that and all our other policies, it's accessible in plain English and you don't need to search. So we're infusing AI in every part of our operations, and I think that is the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm wondering, for the futurist, have you also considered, right, the political context in which we are all teaching? I mean, you know, we're in DC, and you know, the things that are going on with this administration, Department of Education, this push towards having a higher ed comply with or you know, repurpose itself for, right, the future of work, which kind of goes counterintuitive to how some of us teach. But you know, I'm wondering if there's been any discussion about the political context in which we are also operating in. Thank you.
I don't want to talk about politics now. It's interesting how the entire morning, I think, what's happening in the White House really hasn't come up until now, right? Did I miss something? And I think that's healthy. What's happening out of the White House is just so random. I'm not really sure how to answer your question. Maybe I'll defer to somebody else.
Working. I want to mention that AI is certainly, we are in a big competition to China. And currently the US doesn't want to put any regulation on AI because they think that it will hurt the US competitiveness. But I think that's the wrong way to approach AI, because AI will have implications on society, it will have implication on work, it will have lots of implications. And we need to compete, of course, with each other, but we need to still set the limits of what AI can do and what we should use AI for and what we should not use AI for. So we need to cooperate with China and other countries and not just say, no, we cannot have any regulations on AI because it will hurt our competitiveness in China.
Can I just add also that I think we still have a choice to make. So we have to consider ourselves, you know, we're the potential consumers of $1 billion industry. And that means we're bombarded with, you know, free tools that will soon be paid and you know, propaganda essentially with all the marketing. Sorry, futurist. But it also means we can embrace some of them, but we just have to constantly remind ourselves we're not forced to adopt any one of these tools. We can choose very deliberately, and we can continue to assess and reassess all of the different aspects we care about that those tools, you know, impact, whether it's ethical questions, privacy, equity, and all of the others.
So I had a question about the survey. Did you collect data on the majors of the students that participated in the survey? Sorry, yes. For the survey, did you collect data about the majors
No, we didn't collect. We just asked them what they think will the overall impact on society, the overall impact on themselves, and then the age and the income level. That's the only 4 questions we asked. I just wanted to get an idea, and I thought probably these results will be completely, useless because they will not be statistically significant. It will just be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but it didn't turn out like that. So that's why I thought it's quite interesting results. Yeah, in retrospect, I would like to have made a much bigger survey. But we have a bigger survey from the other people who presented just half an hour ago.
And how did you choose the data? I mean, the people that...
So we just arbitrarily approached people. We went to the SIS. We went, no, outside it was too cold. It was January, February. But we went to the dining hall. We went to the Mary Graydon Center. We went to the coffee places. We went to some of the classrooms. We just arbitrarily asked people. And it was really confidential. We gave them a piece of paper, so we didn't ask them, oh, what is your income level? We said, okay, if you want to participate in this survey, there are 4 simple questions, completely confidential, and then we collected it without looking at it.
So Erran mentioned a strategy at Syracuse of having a clear delineation of 0, 1, and 2, none, some, and open. I think that's a great strategy. I know not having a policy is of great concern to many students. So maybe between Erran and Anna, can you say what might be the limitations of implementing something like that here? Is that possible, to give students some clarity, or is that something that we wouldn't do here?
That's a tough one. I think it's doable. The question is, how do we create buy-in? So we've had a lot of conversations about a similar approach, like the red, yellow, green kind of denotation to any assignment. And I think at this point, the best we can do out of the center is to encourage faculty to start thinking about these things and to talk about them. I'll put a plug in right now for the session next week on building communities of practice on AI. So feel free to sign up, even if you can't be at the session. But we want to begin having conversations. And then there's also the interim guidance that I think is already public, that hopefully at some point will be non-interim guidance, whatever the noun is for that, or the adjective. Yeah, I think it would help. I think students could benefit from the structure. I really don't have an answer for how to do it, though.
I defer to Anna on this, but Ben, you're still in the Senate, right?
Yes.
No? Yes?
Yes.
All right, so there we go. Senate says start working.
I think absolutely we need more input from faculty and also from students. We have an interim guidance, but we need to have this, more permanent guidance, not just interim guidance. And it needs to be revised time to time, and we need input from faculty, we need input from students. I don't think it's the best idea to just let the people who think they know about it, let them decide about it.
I'll start there. When we think about the Writing Center, students go to the Writing Center because they may have questions or need some more support. Now, when we think about the AI, the integrating AI in the classrooms, are we going to have something similar for students that may be wanting to ask additional questions, but they're too afraid to ask their instructor because then that may make them believe that the instructor thinks I'm cheating. So I'm just trying to figure out, is that something that we've considered? Because we talked about the chief AI officer. Of course, the students may not want to go there, but maybe come up with a different program, AI Writing Center or something, so the students can ask those questions, be free to ask those questions. Hey, is this correct? Did I use AI? However, So I'm just trying to figure out, is that something that we've discussed in the past?
I think that's a really interesting idea, actually. And there is a lot of data, I'm not sure if from AU, but nationwide data, Alice and Thomas could probably speak to this as well, that at places that use detection tools, the false positive rate is stunning. And it just kind of indirectly creates an anxiety among all students, whether or not that have ever touched AI, that their professor is going to think that they have. And having a place where they could go confidentially and ask questions and share the syllabus and ask for clarification before they go to the professor, I think would be really great. The question is how.
We have to conclude the panel now. So please join me in thanking the distinguished panel. So before we actually head out to lunch, just hold 2 minutes, please. So I'd like to invite Dean Marchick, Kogod School of Business Dean Marchick, to give us a 2-minute remark before we head out to lunch.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see everybody. I appreciate Guanhu putting me before lunch. So it's an incentive to be quick. I want to thank you, Guanhu, for organizing this, and thank all of you for being here. And I know we have a lot of brilliant scholars in the room. I want to thank you for your teaching impact. On the way here, I brought my SUV, which is electric, full with about $400 or $500 worth of pasta, peanut butter, bread, and other food to the Valoric Center, where we're having a food drive, because some of our students are going to their professors and saying, I'm terribly embarrassed, but I'm on SNAP and I have no food. So what you all do in the classroom changes people's lives, and I just want to thank you. I want to leave you with 3 things to think about as we grapple with what we do about AI, because nobody knows. We're making it up as we go along, and all these questions and discussions are great. Speed, impact, and reinvention. Okay, speed. AI is the fastest technology that has ever been invented in the history of the world. Okay? ChatGPT, which now has 900 million users, reached 100 million users in 2 months. Okay? It took Amazon 10 years. Facebook 5 years. Okay? So it's 60x the speed of Amazon, 30x the speed of Facebook. Okay? And we're sitting here in a university, and universities move slow. Okay? So speed is essential. I'm dating myself, but it's like Tom Cruise. I feel the need for speed. So I don't know if you like him or Iceman better, but impact. This morning, the Challenger and Gray, which is one of the leading human resources outsourcing firms, put out a report that said there have been more job losses in October of this year than in any month for 20 years. Okay? And the biggest impact is among young people. Okay? It's 30% higher, unemployment is 30% higher among 22 to 25-year-olds. Okay? So your impact in helping our students infuse their studies with AI can change their lives. Now, we're not a vocational school. We're not training them for their first job. We're training them for the rest of their life to be lifetime learners, curious, problem solvers. But you adopting some of these tools can change their lives. I was thinking about Anna. I can't remember Anna. I was not a very good writer when I was in high school. If I could have used AI to help me structure a basic essay, the topic sentences, that would have helped me. Because I could have then said, okay, I know this third paragraph has to be this, and I can fill it in. Okay. Then the third is reinvention. And this really, Erran talked about it, I don't know where, there's Erran. The role of the teacher needs to change, in my view, in the age of AI. Teacher as the disseminator of information, the student as the absorber, and then not the regurgitator, but the replayer or the proof of knowledge. That's dead in an age of AI. So the teacher, in my view, needs to be a facilitator, a coach, a mentor, change the way we teach. So I'm very proud of the work that Kogod has done under Erran and Guan Hu's leadership. When the business school awards were given out in December of 2024 for last year's, the typical suspects won. Harvard, Wharton, UVA for teaching, and there was Kogod as the #1 school in the country for AI, okay? So I'm hoping, the best thing about this is having everybody from outside of Kogod, and I think 90% of the speakers are non-Kogod. We have an AI major, we have an AI minor. The thing that I'm most excited about this year is actually offering AI to non-Kogod students, an AI minor. I was with a healthcare CEO this morning, and Kelly Frias is here. Healthcare is going to be totally transformed based on AI. The way you receive healthcare, diagnoses. So if you're a CAS professor and you're teaching biology or STEM and you're teaching a future physician or someone to go in the healthcare industry, and that student has bio on their resume and a lab and a minor in AI, they're going to be more competitive to get into med school, and they're going to be a better physician. And if you're in SPA and you're teaching a future staff person for a senator, and that student has SPA, top 10 school in the country, #1 in DC on their resume, and they're applying for a Senate job, and they have a minor in AI, senator or chief of staff is going to look at that person and say, this person's going to be able to prepare me for a hearing tomorrow on Eritrea or bio or anything else. So I think what you're doing, Guan Hu, is incredible. I really applaud everybody being here. I mean, what kind of event has 30% of an entire university faculty sign up for anything? It just doesn't happen. And so people are coming in and out because they have classes, but I think this is incredible, and I've loved sitting and learning. So thank you very much for being here, and I'm excited for the afternoon.